Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. It is a currently cloudy Wednesday. I'm kind of turning into a weatherman. Every time I do one of these shows, I tell you what the weather's like because I'm very, very clued in on what's going on outside to determine how much fun I'm going to have the rest of the day when I'm not doing this show. So I think it's supposed to get a little nicer later. Not supposed to rain, although it looks a little bit like rain out there. We'll see. And we get to go back to the Virginia Mason Athletic Center to check out the Seahawks practice today, which is going to be fun for a number of reasons, not the least of which, the Sam Darnold performance on Monday. We've got some fun stuff that's happened since then. Pretty much everybody that was in attendance has reported that he did not have a great practice. Mike Salk had the courage yesterday. Yes, I'd say it takes some courage knowing that Mr. Pearson and, Mike McDonald are with him to ask about whether there's any situation where there could be a different quarterback starting for the Seahawks this year. And Mike McDonald did really well, shot it down and said it was a crazy question. He respected that he had to ask it, but that it's a crazy question that Sam's going to be their starter. And, he went on to kind of poo-poo this notion that, oh my gosh, the media is there for one day and they're telling you who's good and who's bad. And we haven't had pads on yet. And hopefully if you saw my practice report, the first 3 minutes is me offering all of those caveats to my observations. I tried to be as even-handed as possible. It is one practice. It is no pads. They're installed. The defense is well ahead of the offense for a variety of reasons. Like there's a million things that I think are legitimate reasons why, it wouldn't have been great. Some of those things don't really explain why Drew Lock looked so much better. But I think the explanation there can just as easily be that he was going against Nehemiah Pritchett and Demario Williams and some other guys versus Devin Witherspoon and Reek Woolen and so forth. So level of competition does matter. And I think that's fine. McDonald went on to kind of imply that, look, we're not going to try to create a culture where guys come out and feel like they can't make a mistake, like that they don't feel the ability to play free. Obviously you don't want that. You want guys to be able to feel comfortable, but for me, I felt like it wasn't an example of Sam Darnold taking risks. He didn't look like he was comfortable and ready to let it rip in that practice. So I would kind of push back a little bit on Coach McDonald's characterization there of the culture they're trying to create. Of course, you don't want Sam Darnold to feel like he can't make a mistake in practice. This is absolutely the time to be taking some chances, learning his players, learning his receivers, timing, all that stuff. That's not really what I saw on Monday, but we'll talk more about that and about a bunch of other things. I'm going to bring on my guest here in just a second. Before I do that, make sure you give the show a like, click subscribe, and also head over to hbtix.com, hbtix.com. We have already got, I think, 6 or 7 tickets listed there for Seahawks fans from Seahawks fans to sell to other Seahawks fans. We've got hundreds of folks who have already signed up. We're starting to I just got the automation set up to verify whether you're also a Hawk Blogger Patreon member. So, I think this thing's coming together. I got my fingers crossed. I'm really hoping it makes an impact and that we get more Seahawks fans being able to sell to other Seahawks fans if that's what they want to do. All right. I can't wait any longer. This was one of my favorite guests I've had, definitely over the past few months. We had him on for Real Hawk Talk. It was a great episode. And we've been trying to find a good time to have a conversation again. He just finished like 17 hours of sports talk with his buddy, Mike Salk, and he rolls right in here to talk with us on Hawk Blogger Mornings. He is Brock Huard of Seattle Sports Radio. Brock, man, good to have you. How you doing?
Well, not quite 17 hours, but the alarm went off real early because right now we're practicing 6 to 10 in the morning, so early morning, and not used to that. This old guy, there was a reason that I got out of morning radio, morning drive of getting up at 5 because I was, just getting too old too fast. But waking up and coaching football kind of gets the blood going, and then I scramble over to the studio and take care of business. And so, yes, I should be wired. Like Brian, there should be no concern of, are you sleepy? Do you have any gas in the tank? I am wired and ready to roll, man.
Let's go. I'm glad you brought up the coaching thing. We'll talk about the Seahawks plenty, but I'm really I'm fascinated by your journey and by the choices that you've made. We touched on it last time you were on. And for people that don't know, they're still catching up on what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. You had a really successful, career doing some broadcasting of college football games and other pieces. And, UFL, I think you've been doing recently. And amid all the other things that you've done. And you made the call to set that aside. Highly visible, highly celebrated. You're probably heading north in that industry. It takes something different to actually say, I'm going to pause that and I'm going to go and I'm going to coach high school football. So talk to people about what that process.
Well, I would say two things. It was actually on your show where all of that just caught fire. I mean, I had shared it on the morning show and nobody picked it up. And then all of a sudden my phone was just blowing up with all these texts. And I was like, oh no, something happened. The last time this happened was Jim Mora, right? That infamous press conference where my phone, and he just, that whole deal. So I was like, why do I have all these coaches? What, and where did this come from? But Football Scoop, somebody there must watch your show and picked up on that. And then it just kind of caught fire and then became, kind of more public news. So kudos, man. You got some audience that was watching. So that really became official news, quite honestly, after jumping on with you and doing that show. I know that sounds, and I appreciate the question, and that sounds like all glamorous or holier than thou or what. It was really simple, Brian. It was really Titus, my son, last year during football season, as he was a freshman, and he just said, I really wish you were here. And I forget where I was, Lubbock, Ames, somewhere in the Big 12 on a Friday night or whatever. And it was like, wow, that's a no-brainer. And just so happened to coincide with my contract being done at Fox as well. So that was perfect. All right, Lord's opening this door, closing this door. It's how it's worked my whole life. This door opens, this door closes, this door opens, this door closes. So I would say, yeah, those things made it a pretty easy decision to say yes.
There's you're a husband and a father, obviously, as part of this story, and you've been on the road a fair amount during football.
19 years,
right?
19 years on the road. Yeah, 12 with ESPN, the last 7 with Fox, and gone for 17 straight weekends from the end of August before Labor Day all the way into December, and the year I did the NFL all the way into the new year. But yeah, 19 years of that life pattern.
All right, remind me your wife's name.
Molly.
So Molly, how does Molly feel about having Mr. Huard home a lot more? Is that welcome, or is it man, I was used to my space and now hubby's around a lot more?
Yeah, what always happens, September was fine, October starts to fray, and then by November, I would hear I didn't sign up to be a single parent. So I'm curious now if the pendulum's going to swing the other way, and come September's fine, October we refrain, and then November, I didn't sign up for you to be home. So we'll see. We'll see how all that kind of shakes itself out over the course. I will have weekends. I did get a hunting license during COVID. I did all that preparation and study, and I'd like to, because I love deer, I love elk, I love those things. Really, really love elk. So there may be an opportunity in September, October that I've never had before. Get to travel and watch my nephews. One's at Idaho, one's at USC. Get to watch them play college football. There's going to be an immense amount of cool new, margin and time that I never had before.
I think there's something to that. You talked about doors opening and closing, and that happens to everybody, whether they realize it or not. It doesn't mean just because the door unlocks that the person has the wherewithal to actually put their hand on the knob and turn, right, and walk through the over the threshold. And all those different experiences you're talking about, that's what keeps life kind of vibrant, right? You can get in these ruts of, I just have to keep doing what I know. It does feel like you've had, maybe you've had enough positive reinforcement for making those decisions and to just changing your path that this wasn't as hard as it is maybe for other people.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I've done enough coaching of Titus through baseball and youth football and the strength in the garage with the youngsters, putting them through workouts, and to know that there's part of me that really, really enjoys this.
Yeah.
That has been around it. My dad did it at Hall of Fame level. I was around Tony Dungy, right? I was around Scott Linehan. I was around great coaches and life experience. And for 19 years, one of my two favorite aspects of the job was building our own team, right? With our broadcast crew that would all travel together for those 17 weeks, producer, director, sideline reporter, play-by-play, camera crew. Like, you all become a team and a family doing that. And I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the second part was sitting with the coaches. I remember asking Kurt Menefee this, Brian, one time. We were driving to a Seahawks preseason game down in LA. Excuse me, when the Chargers were playing in that little soccer stadium. And I was driving, and Kurt does mostly studio, right? The face of Fox NFL Sunday, and awesome job with the boys, and highest rated of those pregame shows for a reason. They all love each other and got a great team. But I said to Kurt, when you broadcast, who do you speak to? Right? Like, who is the audience that is like front of mind? And I've asked Sean McDonough and Benetti and lots of people through the years that I really respect. Like, like when you're up there, and it's very easy to say, oh, nobody, I'm reacting off you. And I think ultimately, if you spend some time pondering that, like, are you speaking to the fan? Right? That was always ESPN's thing. Like, we are here to serve the audience and serve the fan. Fox was very clearly, we are here to serve the players in the football, and the football is king, and the football is the story, and we don't concentric circles and all. No, we are here for the football, right? And not that they're totally divergent, that makes it sound like they're two totally different. And they're not. All these things blend together. But for me, I always felt like, gosh, if I could gain the respect of the coaches, that to me was the most, like, the Twitter audience, the fans, the player, that's all great. Families, that's all wonderful. But just in my DNA, I think being a coach's son, it was always like, I want to really gain the respect. I want to walk in that meeting if I have a repeat team later in the year, and I want to walk in there and I want to look them in the eye, and I want them to respect the work, the study, the preparation, the observation, the questions, the depth of football, all of those things. I wanted to really gain. So to me, I always felt like, yeah, I want to do this job and do that job in a way to gain the respect of those coaches and people in football. That was not my bosses necessarily, not, the fans necessarily, not the players necessarily, but yeah, the people in football.
We're talking to Coach Huard, and it's that's got to feel a little funny to hear that, given your background and who you grew up with. I'm curious. You talked about really wanting to earn the respect of those coaches, and I'm sure that's not just from your broadcast years. Who are the guys, like, when you talk about a coach actually wants to go in there and earn respect to the players as well. And there's everyone's that's played any sport, there's that interaction with the coach, and there's all sorts of coaches, just the way there's all sorts of players, there's all sorts of people. What are the things that for you as a player led you to respect a coach?
Yeah, those there's a couple that come right to my mind, and then there's been a few examples on the other side that have been so deeply frustrating. And I was just at a wedding with a few of my old teammates and players, and kind of chatting through some of that. That coach, like a Jim Zorn, that would truly, legitimately take the bullet. Like, nope, this is like, you're my guy, and if the head coach is wrong on something, or it was coached wrong, or like, I'll call him out. I'll also equally hold you accountable. Like, it was totally authentic, totally and completely authentic. Tony Dungy, that totally treated everybody the same. The janitor, Peyton Manning. I think ultimately why they won a Super Bowl, and Peyton realized the most success there in his career at that point was Tony was so unbelievably consistent and authentic in that way. So that comes right to front of mind. And I think that's probably in our lives and our friendships and our relationships as well. Yeah. I think we have deeper relationships with those that are authentic, and those that have a motive, and those that leverage, and those that, will not always, present in that way, perform in that way, are kind of tougher to be friends with. So, and have a
100%.
relationship with.
100%. And we're going to bring it back to the Seahawks here in a second, but this is all part of that conversation. So, you walk in there now, and you're wanting to prepare to be like, I don't know you, but I know you enough to know that you don't just walk in there blind. You've been preparing to be as good of a coach as you can be. So what are the things that you are looking at in order to learn how to be the best coach you can be? Where do you focus?
Yeah, leaning into those that have done it really, really well, right? Leaning into and thankfully have connective tissue with Colby Fleener, Ben Hartsock, right? Guys that have been tight ends at the NFL level and are just great guys and great communicators. And so, leaning into them, leaning into, I think, some of my strengths and understanding my strengths and my weaknesses. You get to the NFL and you play quarterback, or you get to the media and you get the chance to call, games at a high level. You do start to realize, like, this is what I do well. This is not my greatest strength. And guys stick around in the NFL, Brian. I say this all the time, not just because of the things that they are, but they know what they're not, and they avoid those things, and they maximize what Tom Brady never would have made it. Never in the Peyton Manning would have wanted to throw on the run to prove critics wrong. No, there were no real sprint outs and nakeds in the playbook. Like, no, we do what we do really, really, really well. So, in that same vein, like my organization, and right now we're in the install phase of the offense, and like, okay, I gotta put on this big whiteboard that I went and bought at Office Max. Okay, I gotta organize this, right? And for my tight ends, like, here's our formations, and here's our schemes, and here's our protections, and here's the route combinations, and here's why. And looking at all these freshmen this morning at 6 a.m. who were listening to German, like, what did I just walk into? I have never heard anything like this in my entire life, with all the RPOs and the checks and the no huddle, and like, it was just totally spinning. So yeah, just trying to be just hyper organized, hyper detailed, kind of the way I went into my broadcasts and did those games, and just felt really, really prepared.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to Brock Huard of Seattle Sports, and part of the reason I'm poking on this, besides just genuine interest in your journey and that path, is I think it's also a fascinating process we're watching. We've seen this before, where you get a new coach in with the Seahawks, and you've got the roster that is coming to get to know him. There's a culture you're trying to build. Head coach is obviously different than position coach, and I know you're going to be a position coach at least to start.
Mm-hmm.
But you feel that with like Mike McDonald coming in last year, trying to earn that respect. You have this situation where the defense goes through what it went through and ends up being, pretty good. The offense goes what it goes through, and his first hire there didn't work out. You have Geno Smith and DK Metcalf essentially getting to the point where they didn't want to be here for whatever reason. You got to bring in a new coaching staff, like all this change. What do you think, like, of his journey? Like, not to mention he had his first kid in his first year as a head coach. Can you imagine at 37, 38 years old, like, how to navigate all that?
I'll tell you what he is, Brian. And I think over 19 years of being around these coaches, and this UFL is an amazing experience too, because everything is mic'd up. And literally, the Fox owns the league. So it's like, nope, you can talk to the coach in real time and ask him why he called that play. Like, we have such unbelievable access to all of that. So you hear everything. And I think I've come to the conclusion that people always say, I'm so competitive. Oh man, Bill Belichick must have been so competitive. He was there at 5 and he left at midnight. And Bill Walsh and the greatest coaches and all these goats and Pete Carroll, so competitive. He wrote a book about compete every day. I'm a firm believer. Like, I don't need to hear how competitive you are. I need to see how disciplined you are. And it really is no different in your business that you've jumped into and you're starting and you're running with. Is the discipline to do this job every day, the discipline to go to the combine, the discipline to go to the owners meetings, the discipline, to go to the OTAs, the discipline to feed the content machine and feed your audience and provide them things that hopefully they don't get anywhere else, right? Salk and I, the same thing for 16 years on the radio. Like, every day, the discipline, like when we go to bed, like, this is where we're going to go. Here's our show. Here's our guests. It's not just showing up. It's not just showing up. You show up, you don't make it. You just don't make it. And I think what Schneider was so enamored with when it came to McDonald, as was a lot of the league, as were frankly Shanahan and McVay, that did not want McDonald to be in their division, is his just unrelenting discipline, like his process and his discipline. He is a remarkable cat now. And it helps actually to be 37 or 38, right? And I think that's why a lot of the league is gone and tried to find that next McVay and find that next Shanahan and find that next McDonald and find that next O'Connell. Like, yeah, man, there's great benefit energy-wise when they can be in their mid-30s and, function on 4 hours or 5 hours sleep, where in your late 40s, you can't. You just can't. So there's very few Pete Carrolls in the world that are wired with his DNA and his genetics to be able to do what he does. With the energy that with which he has it. So I think as you spin it to the Seahawks, Mike has that. And I think he wanted that with an offensive staff. And if there was one big takeaway from the OTAs the other day, just listening to the sound, listening to some of the clips that the Seahawks have sent out, John Boyle and others from practice, is just seeing now that same relentless detail and that same relentless discipline that you're going to find from an offensive staff that has been through this journey a bunch.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I look at, I obviously I heard him on with you guys yesterday. It was great stuff as usual, and it's been fun listening to you guys try to forge that relationship with Mike, the way you had to forge it with Pete over the years, and obviously completely different people in some regards, but they also hold a lot of the same values. Like the type of football that they like is pretty similar. Their emphasis is pretty similar, but the way it comes out, its packaging is very, very, very different.
Yes.
And Mike was right to call, Coach McDonald was right to call out media and Mike Salk, who it was kind of like the sacrificial lamb.
He was.
He threw himself in the middle of in front of that bus.
Yeah.
Talking about Sam Darnold, and he's like, you know what? Like, we're not going to create a culture where people are worried about making mistakes. We want people to get out there and rip it. And I think that's all great, Brock. But I was there, and the issue wasn't that Sam was letting it rip and making mistakes. It was more that he wasn't letting it rip. That he was
a little tentative, right?
He was looking tentative relative to Drew Lock for sure. So, I think there's all sorts of reasons, and I'm not going to overblow this. All the caveats aside, how do you explain that? How do you explain that a quarterback like Sam Darnold looking like the most hesitant of the group? And this is the guy that's had more success than any of the guys on the roster and has even played a little bit in this system.
Yeah, I would say a couple things. I think it's all new, right? And it's new people. It's a new place. It's yes, it's for Drew Lock as well, but he'd been there for a few years on that practice field and knows some of the guys and his way around the block and all the rest of it. So there is like this newness. We just are now starting third phase of this, trying to get on the same page with everybody. Whole new set of receivers, and while he knows the system and the language, which should be very beneficial, right? Like it would be easier to explain, Brian, if he had no background, right? I could easily get on here as any analyst and would say, well, understand, man, he's trying to learn a whole new language. No, he knows this language. He's been well versed in it for years and years, and even was with Clint there in San Francisco. So that's not it. And then I think it does become a little more about the psychology, right? Drew Lock has nothing to lose. He got another couple $1,000,000 and he loves life. And like, hey man, they're not counting on me, like all this expectation. And Pete would say this all the time, maybe more off the record than on, but even on with us, like these young guys coming into this league just get crushed. The amount of expectation they feel. I think I shared with you on this the last time we were on, a story from Chris Peterson talking about being around these Elite 11 guys and the weight that they feel and the burden they feel. And that's all real. They're human beings. And so a Jalen Milroe, 3rd round pick. Yeah, I'm not supposed to know what I'm doing, right? I can run around and Drew Lock, like, yeah, man, I'm the backup. Like, I know the league, been around it. I'll sling it. But Sam, you're the guy. right? And with that comes a lot of expectation, and maybe sometimes for different guys, different voices, right? And some paralysis by overanalysis. And maybe I throw a pick and I want to throw another pick, just those voices that you, as best you can, the best of them, just flush it and just go play. And it's so easy to say, just go play, just go have fun, just go let it rip.
One of the things that I don't think people have talked about as much on this topic is my observation there. It wasn't just about Sam. If it was about who he was throwing to, and that's probably, I think that's maybe as big of a question mark on this roster as the quarterback position, because if you had a DK Metcalf on this roster, if you had a Justin Jefferson, whatever that you were throwing to, that guy would be first read and you'd be taking advantage of that. And you would be probably not hesitating. But what I saw was Cooper Kupp and JSN and MVS, like, not open on first read or second read on some of those. And so, like, this is Mike McDonald would too. Mike McDonald would say it's a team, it's a shared responsibility, right? And so,
do any of us though, and does your audience think like he's going to be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson?
Sam Darnold?
Right. Like he's going to be a facilitator. And that too is kind of, as I re-listen back to some of Mike McDonald's stuff today, and the answer to that is also like, hey man, he's like he's like a 6-hole hitter. He's not a bottom of the order, not the top of the order. He's right there. And he's going to most benefit with a lengthened lineup when everybody does their job. So in this setting, with no run game, no play action, right? No movement. No, like it's just, he's not going to be at his best. How about this one for you? Max Duggan. Yeah. Remember the name Max Duggan?
Of course.
The old Spitfire from TCU, who was second in the Heisman, led them to the national championship game. Brian, I tell you, if you watched him throw, you'd be like, what? How did he do that? How did he was the runner up for the Heisman legitimately and throw for like 4,000 yards and do all this stuff? Because if you watch it in practice, you'd be like, there's no chance. And in fact, going into that season, he was beat out by a redshirt freshman that threw a really pretty ball and was, beautiful and touch and all this. It wasn't even close. And then that guy struggled and he felt the weight of the pressure and he flinched, and Max went in there and was just like, man, I play with like a reckless, just competitive fire. And I don't care what it looks like. I'm just a baller, and goes on to do it. Goes to the UFL. I watch him in warmups. I said to Joel Klatt, like, bro, this is broken. This is Tim Tebow. Like, I can't believe he's regressed as a thrower. And Anthony Beck's like, you just wait, man. Lights go on. You just wait. 6-0 as a starter. He's going to be playing in the semifinal Saturday, probably going to find a way to win. Like you just, and that's a long, convoluted story to say there's going to be some of these guys. Geno will look really good in that setting and has for years. Like he throws a really pretty ball, man. It's on time and it's great. And Drew Lock looks pretty good in those settings, man. He could spin a football, right? Sam Darnold, I don't think he's going to be at his best in shorts at an OTA. I think he's going to be at his best, when those lights come on, and why the guys around him loved him a season ago in Minnesota. And hopefully he feels that same kind of respect and love and grows in that same way this season.
We're talking to Brock Huard of Seattle Sports Radio. And Brock, do you have a few more minutes? I got a few more questions for you. If you
Yeah, I do. And it's only because of my long answers that you haven't even got to.
No, these are great answers, man. I'm loving every minute of this. It's funny. There's a couple things I wanted to touch on. So one, you mentioned, they want him to be a distributor, point guard, right? And Pete Carroll terms, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Do you ever play pickup basketball?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, my wife marvels that pickup basketball is a thing, that guys just walk into a gym with people they've never met and just start playing a game with them. But love pickup basketball, loved it my whole life. The experience when you walk into a new court and there's the guys that can dunk, there's the guys that are jumping out of the gym, and then there's like the
John Kitna,
55-year-old guy that can just hit an elbow jumper.
John Kitna.
Yeah. I'm kidding. And how often do you see the team that runs the court not necessarily be the most talented team?
Yeah.
Happens.
Yeah, we did it at Bally's back in the day, man. Kitten and me, and our strength coach that could jump 7'6" high jumper. He's unbelievable, Todd. So he did some really pretty dunks. But John and I below the rim. John really below the rim. But elbow, block out, make the extra pass.
Yes.
Yeah, do all the little
defense,
things.
Like all those things. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when I look at this Seahawks offense and it's like, I think potentially most optimistic path, it's not about being the most dynamic offense in the NFL. It's about finally being cohesive, like where the parts fit together, where the run game actually knows what it's doing when it's going to do it, that they repeat it and they repeat it well, that they have play action off of that, and that the play calls are called in the right moment against the right defensive call, and the adjustments are there. The protections are right. The receivers don't drop passes. They can make some contested catches. It feels like the best offense here is just a gritty, reliable crew. Do you buy that?
Oh, 100,000% I buy that. I mean, that is, and I think if you listen to Mike and what he was really looking for and why he made a hard move, man, it's not easy on Ryan Grubb and Scott Huff. And like, those are quality coaches, and they took a swing and took a risk to do, and bring some of that collegiate background. And it, unfortunately just didn't work because it didn't in many ways match what you're talking about. Gina threw for a lot of yards, got $100 million contract. DK got $35 million a year in Pittsburgh. Like, they produced a lot of yards at times, a pretty decent amount of points, but there was no complementary ball. And that is the game, man. That's the NFL. That's the elite colleges do it. The elite NFL teams, organizations consistently, in Philly and Baltimore. Like, yeah, man, you play complementary ball. And it was not complementary ball. The Seahawks offense last year was that team at Bally's that, yeah, man, they can one game hit 9 threes and dunk on you, and the next one be right off the court, right? So he wants a whole lot more of that gritty, grind it, move people. The 2011, 12, 13, 14 Seahawks offense. Right now, that one happened to have a QB that made 4 to 6 plays a game that were pretty darn elite, with his legs, with his creativity, with his wizardry, with his deep ball. And I think that will be some of the proof on Sam. Like, that's what I'm looking for is, can you make, 4 to 6 of those plays a game that hopefully your wealth of experience and your brain, and he's got a strong arm. I mean, you can throw it 70 yards. Like, do you have that in you when it really, really matters against the elite guys?
Well, and to that point, Brock, I mean, I looked up before Sam Darnold, how many people have thrown for 4,300 plus yards and 35 plus touchdowns in a season in, NFL history. And the list is like a who's who of quarterbacks. Almost none of them, like maybe 2 out of like 45 seasons, were guys that didn't really repeat it. So Sam Darnold did that. And I also was looking today, if I was to ask you who threw the most touchdown passes against the Seahawks last year, who would you say?
I would say Josh, because they were so effortless. Josh Allen of the Bills, but they ran it as much as they threw it. So I think it is Sam, right? At the end of the year, he had to throw a bunch of them.
He and Brock Purdy threw 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. They were the only guys to do that against Seahawks. No one had more than 2. And if you look at guys that had games of 4 or more touchdowns and 0 interceptions in the NFL last year, there aren't a lot of guys that did it. In fact, 2 of them are on this roster, by the way. Drew Lock did have a game like that against the Colts late in the year. But Sam Darnold's, he had the second most after Lamar Jackson. He did that twice last year. He had a game with 5 touchdowns and no picks. He had a game with 4 touchdowns. That's I'd look at that, Brock, and I'm like, that's what should matter more than what you show in practice. But as well as me, you got to practice it before it actually shows up on that field.
You do. And you don't get a gazillion reps. I mentioned the UFL, like they have 45-man rosters. I think chatting with a bunch of the OCs, they get like 20 full speed team reps. It's kind of walk through, try to keep everybody together like on Tuesday and Wednesday, and maybe they'll do 20 full speed reps. That's it. And, you're out there and you're charting lots of different stuff and had in the past. I don't think they allow you to do that anymore, but
No, they don't.
yeah, yes, it's not like there's thousands of reps.
Mm-mm.
It's not like there's even hundreds of reps. Like, you got to make the most of those and kind of build that equity and trust, not with the Nemhausers and the Salks and, any of those folks on the sidelines. You got to build it with your teammates in that huddle. And that'll be an important part of this week of OTAs, the final week of mini camp, and then as you push into training camp, and everything happens in a blink.
All right, last question for you, and just a quick point on that. I mean, I don't know if you heard Devin Witherspoon after practice on Monday, but that wasn't exactly glowing praise of his quarterback. And I think you talk about earning respect. It's not just the offensive guys; it's the defense. Like, think about that LOB team and how much of a friction there was.
Oh,
right.
Gosh.
So, like, I think Sam, in some ways, Brock, it's set up perfectly. He's going against a good defense. If he's actually able to start earning their respect, that's going to be a very good sign. Monday was not necessarily the day to do it. But last question for you is, there's enough new here. There's enough open questions. I'm curious for you. What's the moment you're going to be looking for, or the thing you're going to be looking for that's going to be a green flag for you to say, all right, I think this might actually just work? Like, what do you need to see for that to be the case?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple, actually. And I don't know. Hopefully we see signs of it in training camp. It's hard to do, again, in preseason with the physicality, the lack thereof, the elite talent that does and does not play and everything else. But again, going back to 12 and 13 and 14 and 15, and the image that I think Mike really wants this offense to look and be like is, can you just move people and blow people off the ball, right? That crew was so good at just creating movement, right? These coaches say displace. Can you displace those guys from their spot? I ran into Colby Fleener, the old tight end with the Colts and Saints, and lives in the neighborhood. And he was like, "Oh man, tight end coach, you got to do what Dan Campbell did with us." Dan was our tight end coach, and he would put shoulder pads on as the coach, and he would, and he was like, it was so cool because he wasn't. I mean, he was right there, literally in it with us. And the point was, and Dan's point was, you're not gonna at the NFL, you're not gonna do what you do to a defense in college or in high school, where you just, deplete, demoralize, but you need to move them still. And so Dan would have them grab and then actually bring them close to them and kind of lift them off their spot to take away their leverage. It's not it's kind of counterintuitive. You're not trying to just bully someone and hit somebody, knock them over. You're actually bringing them closer to you and trying to lift their leverage away from them. And so you can just kind of shield them, right? And you could just kind of turn them, right? You're not going to just displace and destroy, but you can turn, you can leverage. And that's what I'll be looking for, because when you do that, you then play pass. And, it's a pretty simple recipe, man. Run and play action pass. It still works, right? I think Mike McDonald, when they got torched last year by Buffalo and by the different teams, that was the one phenomenon, the one common constant. Like, yep, what do you want me to say? Can't stop the run, and the play pass is deadly. And that's still the most potent combination in the NFL today.
Well, it certainly would be ironic if the Seahawks come out there with a physical run game that's reliable and a good defense, and the pass game struggles. That would be at least a different set of problems for the Seahawks versus what we've seen over the last decade. Brock, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, man. Good luck on the coaching stuff. I personally want to hear plenty more about it, and I know. Too, Coach McDonald, he would be happy to talk ball with you and just talk coaching the whole time. So don't be afraid to keep bringing it up. I think that was fun to listen to.
You got it, bud. Appreciate it. And just don't continue. Like, every time you take Salk out and you destroy his confidence, it takes me like a week to get it back. So don't take him on that golf course anymore, please. Like, we've tried to put Humpty Dumpty back together, his confidence, his self-esteem, because he said you hit bombs from the left side. I didn't even know. You're a lefty, huh?
Well, you and I got to stick together, buddy.
No,
Yeah,
I'm a weirdo on the golf course. I'm a lefty thrower, but I'm a righty hitter. That's why I'm so bad. So I wish I was
I don't
wish I
believe you're
was a
bad,
lefty.
man. I
Yeah.
would love to see you hit a ball one of these
Yeah.
days, but take care of yourself. I will do my best to
All
keep
right.
Seahawks impression and mood on the positive. All right, man. Take care.
See you, buddy.
All right, that's Brock Huard of Seattle Sports Radio. Make sure you check him out on every morning with Mike Salk. Best show out there, man. They are the standard for Seattle Sports Radio, and it's one of the only shows I still listen to be honest. I love what they've got going, the dynamic that they've created over the years. I think the conversations they have are ones that I want to hear. So really, really appreciate Brock taking a few minutes to come out on the show. And I'll have Mike on at some point as well, totally different type of conversation and different topics. But I was interested to hear from Brock kind of where he is, because he's not getting to see, go to practice the same amount as some of the rest of us. So, interesting to hear where his perspective is, talk about Sam Darnold as kind of a 6-hole hitter from a baseball point of view and a distributor. I'm not ready to hang it up on Sam Darnold after one practice. So I don't think that should be the takeaway. I am much more of the mindset of it was just odd. The fact that he was so uncomfortable, and a little frenetic in the pocket just was odd. It wasn't what I expected to see relative to the other quarterbacks or relative to what I've seen when I've attended practice before. I'm looking forward to today. It could look very different. And the other thing that I said before that I stand by is it's not just about Sam Darnold. The reason he was a little bit frenetic to some extent is because his first read was covered and his second read was covered. And you've got what might be one of the top 3 secondaries in the NFL that he's going against. And I don't think you have one of the top 3 or 5 receiving cores in the NFL. And so you're going to have some challenges there. And, you can make the argument it's good that he wasn't forcing the ball into a space where it wasn't ready. And he did dump the ball off quite a bit in that practice, which he should do. But it just looked herky-jerky. It did not look like a smooth, calm progression. And, hopefully I want to see the 1, 2, 3 balls out kind of thing. But the reality is Sam Darnold is a guy that holds onto the football as much or more than almost any quarterback in the NFL. So I think he does take a lot of sacks, even before the playoff game. He'd taken 48 sacks last year. He does hold onto the ball, but he does make a lot of big plays. And I went back and I looked at the games against the Seahawks last year. And if I asked you who had a better game against the Seahawks, Sam Darnold or Matt Stafford, or Sam Darnold or Jordan Love, or Sam Darnold or, Kyler Murray. Sam Darnold pretty much outplayed all of those guys against the Seahawks. Now, that's not the ultimate arbiter, but you want to see what a guy does on the road against a good defense. And Darnold, threw for 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 112 passer rating against the Seahawks. And the throws I saw him make in that game were legitimate. The game-winning throw was a crazy, impressive throw with pressure in a long yardage situation. So it's in there. You don't just lose those things just because, you go to a new team or you play in a new offense. You look at Matt Stafford against the Seahawks, and that was with overtime. In regulation, he had a couple hundred yards passing, 1 touchdown and 1 pick. If you look at Jared Goff, who had a crazy game, he literally didn't have an incompletion against the Seahawks. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So ultimately that was, I would say, the best game against the Seahawks defense all year, but that was also against a very different version of the Seahawks defense with a lot of the guys missing, and it was at home in Detroit. Josh Allen actually obviously had a great game, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he had a pick. So I think when you look at Sam Darnold, it is way, way, way too early to make any, come to any conclusions. but he did open the door to questions with the way he performed, and we'll see. We'll see where he goes from there. My expectation is it'll be improving over time, but that's gonna be up to him and his receivers, and eventually his line and his running game and other things, and his OC. So plenty of things left to go before we kind of make any conclusions there. So today, right around noon, I will be back at the Seahawks facility to watch OTAs. We will have, there'll be some press conferences that I will cover after. I'm hopefully going to be getting another interview as well. I don't know who it's going to be. We'll find out together. I will either post that tonight or tomorrow. There won't be a real Hawk Talk tonight. So what I will probably do, I will probably post the player interview for YouTube members, club level and higher. So if you're a club level or higher YouTube user, you'll get to see the interview that I record immediately as soon as I post it. Everybody else, I will play that as part of Hawk Blogger Mornings tomorrow morning, so you can check it out there. We'll also have stuff from the press conference, and if I have other videos, I'll share that. I may do a post-practice report. I know folks love those, and I'll see if I can make that happen. So keep an eye out. If you haven't already, click like and subscribe. Click the bell to get notified. That's the best way to know when I go live. So I don't plan the times. I know it would be easier if I just had a schedule, but I personally, I knew that if I was watching or waiting, I would just want the person to go live as soon as they possibly could. and even if I have to play catch up, I can do that. So that's what I try to do. I got a super chat here from Bryce Coots. It's so nice to have Bryce back in our audience here. He says, "This is such an awesome show. Thank you both to Brian and Brock." That is really nice of you, Bryce. I am glad. I'm glad you guys liked it. I mean, I think it's great talking to Brock. He's great at what he does, and he's very authentic. Like, I think that's part of where we connect, is similar Gen X kind of vibe. Like, you get what you get. Like, we are who we are. And there's not a lot that you have to interpret in between read in between the lines on it. And so I think we connect on that vibe for sure. Jen is so obsessed with me interviewing Jason Peters. Jen, I got to tell you, not high on my list. He's not high on my list. It's nothing against Jason Peters. I've got a lot of other players, a lot of other coaches I want to talk to first, but you can keep requesting it. I've heard you loud and clear. Eventually I'll probably talk to him, but it's not going to be, one that I prioritize. Jay Harbaugh will be one of the guys at the press conference. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow. And I think we're going to talk to Clint Kubiak today. I'm not positive, but I know one of them's today, one of them's tomorrow. I'm eager to talk to John Benton and Andrew Dinoco and Rick Dennison. There's a lot of guys on that, especially on that offensive staff, I'd love to get a chance to talk to a little bit more. And, it's also a feel of when, like, who has something that they can actually offer. And Jason may be great for that, but I really do get the impression that, he's looking to be in the background, not in the foreground. And the Seahawks in general, they're very careful about who they put in front of the media. And it's usually like, you barely even hear from Leslie Frazier, for example, who has a prominent role with the team, let alone a guy 3rd, 4th, 5th down on the depth chart. Like, we don't ever hear from Jake Peetz, for example, despite the fact that I've tried to talk to him a number of times. So, yeah, I don't think Jason Peters is probably a likely one. All right. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you go to hbtix.com, sign up to be part of the HB Ticket Exchange, the only place where you can go to be a Seahawks fan that sells a ticket to another Seahawks fan, or be a Seahawks fan who buys a ticket from a Seahawks fan. You go there. It's free to use. You do have to sign up. And we've already got tickets listed there. We've got hundreds of people already signing up. We've got people starting to vouch for each other as being legitimate Seahawks fans and legitimate people. Make sure you take advantage of that. Also, it is getting closer to Father's Day, folks. And if you haven't already now is the time to head over to extra.com. The link is in the description of the video. Get one of these Extra Pro wallets, EKSTER. And if you use code HAWK, HAWK, you get 50% off this gorgeous wallet, which I love. And as I showed you before, you press this little button down here and voila, your cards show up. You also get a chance to have, if you haven't already, one of these finder cards that will make it possible for you to find your wallet wherever it is, because it will hook up with Apple Find My iPhone. So really, really easy, great deal for your Father's Day gift. It comes in various colors, nice leather, all the good stuff. They will be really happy that you did it. Use code HAWK at extra.com. All right, folks, that will do it for this episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. I am Brian M. Hauser. Take care.